He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new and very special episode of Supervillains Explored. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the most notorious and all-around most feared enemies in the entire DC universe, and the character who I consider to be the arch-enemy of Superman, and that is none other than the malevolent, unstoppable alien conqueror known as Brainiac. Now, this is probably going to be my longest Supervillains Explored video ever because Brainiac has an insanely long, convoluted, and prolific backstory, and I plan to cover most of that backstory in this video, so let's not waste any time. First, I'm going to talk about the pre-crisis Earth 1 version of Brainiac, the Brainiac that first appeared in comic books in history. Brainiac's first ever comic book appearance was in Action Comics number 242 in July of 1958. Now, when he first appeared in this issue, Brainiac was nothing more than a simple alien warlord who really liked to shrink entire cities from various alien worlds. When he first introduced himself to Superman, Superman was unable to actually defeat Brainiac because Brainiac was able to project this energy field around his whole body that Superman could simply not penetrate. And one thing that already established a personal sense of anger and rivalry between Superman and Brainiac was that one of the many cities that Brainiac had shrunken for his own evil, malicious experiments was none other than the Kryptonian capital city known as Kandor. When Superman first discovered this and he snuck aboard Brainiac's mothership, the Kandorians offered to give Superman extremely helpful advice on how to defeat Brainiac, and they gave him the means to finally defeat Brainiac and make him retreat, but at the cost of any possibility of them actually restoring their city to regular size. So what Superman did was that he took the bottled city of Kandor and he would store it in his Fortress of Solitude, where he would look over the Kandorians on a regular basis. That is pretty much a summary of the first chronicled conflict between Superman and Brainiac. Now, throughout the course of the Earth 1 comics, we would see more and more of Brainiac's backstory, so I'll just spare you some of the real-life details and actually go into Brainiac's full-on pre-crisis origins. Brainiac is actually an android, a supercomputer android that was first created on the planet Kolu. And Brainiac was created by the higher bourgeoisie-esque class of Koluans, who pretty much ruled over the planet with an iron fist. And Brainiac was their secret weapons against the Koluan rebels who sought to rebel against their sort of tyrannical rule. So, when Brainiac first came along, whenever he first gained sentience and he became self-aware for the first time, he actually created a son for himself. And he named this son Vril Dox. also known as Brainiac 2. Brainiac had accomplished what the the higher Coloan class wanted him to. He destroyed the Coloan rebels once and for all, but eventually he would turn against his creators and he would wipe them all out as well. The remaining Coloan races decided to unite together against Brainiac and his ever-growing ambitions of world domination. So when Brainiac was overwhelmed, he left the planet Colu and he finally reevaluated his desires, and that's when he decided that he would collect data and information on every single planet in every single star system in the entire universe. And it wasn't until he came to Earth with ambitions of shrinking Metropolis for his own sick curiosity that he would develop an antagonism towards Superman. That's pretty much Brainiac's pre-crisis origins. Throughout the pre-crisis Earth 1 comics, Brainiac and Superman would constantly clash and fight each other, and most of their encounters involved Brainiac teaming up with Superman's supposed enemy, Lex Luthor. During the 80s, however, both Brainiac and Luthor would receive major physical facelifts, as Lex Luthor would receive his robotic battlesuit, and Brainiac would finally abandon his original organic-looking form in favor of a more Terminator-esque android skeletal exoskeleton-looking form. Now, the reason Brainiac did this was because he felt like his original organic-looking form was simply not enough to combat Superman, and when he upgraded himself into this skeletal cyborg form that looks quite a lot like the modern-day Metallo, but anyways, when Brainiac did this, when he finally adopted this new form, he was able to give himself the abilities to take over any electronical computerized equipment anywhere. So in a sense, he was kind of like Ultron in the fact that his consciousness could inhabit any electronic device, and from that same electronic device, he could rebuild his robot body to constantly torment Superman and various other DC heroes. So during the 80s, Brainiac really stepped up his game, and he became a lot more difficult to defeat because he would keep persistently coming back. The modern New Earth incarnation of Brainiac was a Coloan scientist named Vril Dox, who somehow became immensely powerful and wealthy and somehow managed to create his own private warship, and he was able to create numerous robotic clones of himself that he would send out all across the cosmos to gather data. And during some point during the lifetime of the Kryptonian war criminal known as General Zod, Vril Dox, who renamed himself Brainiac, would arrive to Krypton, and he would shrink the Kryptonian city of Kandor, much like his original pre-crisis incarnation. When Brainiac first came to Earth, or rather his scout units first came to Earth, they took over the body of a human psychic mentalist known as Milton Fine. And Vril Dox sought to display his consciousness through Fine's body, but he figured out that the only way to do this was to kill people and absorb all their organic fluid. And this, of course, caught the attention of Superman, and Brainiac was able to exploit Milton Fine's psychic abilities and use them as weapons against the Man of Steel. Shortly, Brainiac, as Milton Fine, was captured by Lex Luthor, but he was able to use Milton Fine's psychic powers to basically take over LexCorp, and he influenced all the LexCorp scientists to create a robotic android version of his original Culloan body. When that happened, Vril Dox finally managed to take over an incredibly powerful synthetic android replica of himself. And this is the Brainiac, which by the name, Vril Dox would name this body Brainiac 2.5. He would become a very regular enemy of Superman, constantly, and I mean constantly, challenging the Man of Steel in various ways throughout the years. However, one very strange event where when Brainiac 2.5 had induced a sleeper virus into the LexCorp mainframe system, this allowed a future version of Brainiac known as Brainiac 13. No, this isn't the same. This isn't the Brainiac unit that's a member of the Legion of Superheroes. But when this Brainiac came back into the present time, he kidnapped 2.5 and he transferred Brainiac 2.5's consciousness into the body of Lex Luthor's daughter, Lena Luthor. And thus, Brainiac 13 left with Brainiac 2.5's body into the 64th century, but they would come back during Imperix's attack on Earth. Now, when they came back, initially it appeared as if Brainiac 13 and 2.5 were helping out the heroes of Earth against Imperix's attack, but they actually double-crossed the heroes, and I can't remember exactly what happened. All I know is that Brainiac 13 ended up somehow losing 2.5, and 2.5, his consciousness was finally siphoned out of Lena Luthor's body, and that's sort of when Brainiac 2.5 was destroyed. So that was a pretty weird and rocky little curve in Brainiac's existence. Throughout the New Earth comics, Brainiac would try some pretty interesting plans to destroy Superman. One of the most interesting, in my opinion, is when he tried to control the Omax, the army of robots created by Brother Eye, and he would also try to gain control of both Metallo and the Metal Men, in which Superman and Batman had to fight them. But pretty much the ultimate New Earth Brainiac story that I think any comic fan can agree with is the Jeff Johns written Superman story arc simply titled Brainiac. This is the storyline that finally cleared up and explains the entire backstory of the New Earth version of Brainiac. Basically, in this story, a new Brainiac unit arrives at Earth. Superman and Supergirl attempt to decipher its meaning, but then the spaceship of the real, original Brainiac arrives at Earth, and the real Brainiac, the original Vril Dox, ends up attacking the Kent farm, and Jonathan Kent ends up dying as a result. It's here that we finally learn the original Brainiac's intentions, pretty much. That he was the mastermind behind all these various robotic drones and puppets throughout all the years that he had fought Superman. That pretty much does it for the New Earth version of Brainiac. At least that's as far as I've researched. Brainiac is undoubtedly probably Superman's second most well-known enemy aside from Lex Luthor, and he has gone through many different interpretations over the various years of Superman's existence. Probably the biggest change to the character of Brainiac, in my opinion, is probably in the DC animated universe and Superman the Animated Series, where it turns out that Brainiac was the central AI intelligence of the planet Krypton, and that he turned evil and preventing the Kryptonian people from knowing about all of the the seismic disturbances that had been afflicting Krypton. So he downloaded his consciousness to a satellite and escaped Krypton, while everybody else ended up dying, except for Superman, of course. Interestingly enough, I believe I read somewhere that the new 52 version of Brainiac actually takes the most inspiration from the animated Brainiac and his origins. So, yeah. Either way you slice it, Brainiac is an insanely important character in Superman's whole legacy. In my opinion, you can't really have Superman without having Brainiac somewhere in there. And I have yet to see a single live-action version of Brainiac, well, except for the Smallville version, of course. And at least Smallville did somewhat get it right, even if they fucked up a whole lot of other stuff. So yeah, in conclusion, Brainiac is who I consider to be the antithesis of everything we love about Superman. Superman is an alien being who we know nothing about, but his whole purpose is to come to Earth to protect us and everything we stand for. Brainiac is the polar opposite. Brainiac is the idol of all alien horror stories. He is the standard for which we derive all of our fears of extraterrestrial beings. He is pretty much the alien boogeyman. And the only person that can defend that, the only person that we can really depend on to protect us from him is Superman. And that's why I've always really loved Brainiac as a villain of Superman. Other than Darkseid, of course. So yeah, I'm quite astonished with myself that I was able to do this whole video the way I did. And before any of you comment, yes, I'm quite aware that there are at least like a million other versions of Brainiac across all the different comics. But I wanted to focus on specifically the original villainous version of Brainiac. So yeah, this has been my Supervillains Explored on Brainiac. I hope all of you enjoyed, and peace out.